95%.
Yeah. Now, historically, biology meant fewer men reproduced than women anyway. Something like maybe only 40% of men historically left offspring, compared to over 80 or 90% of women. But technology gives women this incredibly efficient, almost instantaneous filtering power based often on very superficial cues. Photos, maybe a short bio. Perfect for the serpent signaling game. Terrible for the dragon's proof of work. It amplifies rejection massively.
And this connects to, well, there's a controversial phrase the sources bring up. Accountability is kryptonite to women. How do they even begin to justify using a phrase like that?
Look, it's definitely a charged phrase popularized recently. The sources don't necessarily endorse the tone, but they analyze the dynamic it's trying to describe. They argue it ties back to this validation versus truth idea.
Okay, explain that.
The argument presented is that in a culture heavily focused on validation, women, perhaps more than men, the sources suggest, may perceive uncomfortable truths as attacks. Things like pointing out declining fertility stats or male accountability data or critiques of certain choices. These can be perceived not as information, but as scolding or anger.
And so the preference shifts.
The sources claim the preference shifts towards men, the serpents, who provide affirmation, validation, the feel-good lies, rather than those who present uncomfortable realities, even if those realities are crucial for long-term planning. This avoidance of accountability, they argue, prevents society from actually facing and solving the demographic problem. Emotional comfort trumps functional reality.
It's a tough argument, but if it's about validation preference, why do we constantly hear the economic excuse? It's just too expensive to have kids. That's the mainstream narrative.
Right, and the sources push back hard on that being the primary driver. They say the global data just doesn't support it.
How so? I mean, housing is expensive. Childcare is expensive.
Sure, but look globally. The poorest populations on Earth, say in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, have incredibly high TFRs. Maybe 4.5 or higher. They live in conditions of extreme poverty, yet have many children.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the wealthiest nations, South Korea, Singapore, Japan, parts of Europe, they have the lowest TFRs, often below 1.5, sometimes below 1.0. If cost was the main driver, shouldn't the richest countries have the most kids, not the fewest?
Yeah, that disconnect is hard to ignore. So the economic pressure isn't the root cause, maybe, but a symptom. Or an excuse enabled by other factors.
That's how the sources frame it. It points to a deeper issue with cultural priorities. Which brings us to what they call the price paradox.
The price paradox, what's that?
It highlights this weird split in what gets cheaper and what gets more expensive. Think about desirable tech gadgets, the toys, the distractions, smartphones. Prices have plummeted, down something like 63% in real terms since 2009.